What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Body Lock. It's your man, Ant Walker, joined by Matt Wells and Drake Riggs, here to talk about UFC 261. So before we get into it, remember to like, subscribe, share, tell a friend to tell a friend, tell that friend to tell 10 more friends. So, of course, we always get on here talking about mixed martial arts. It's kind of what we do here at the Body Lock. And talking about a UFC pay-per-view is pretty typical, very typical. I mean, this is a fight that's going to be headlined by three title fights, three anticipated matchups, two and a half, I'll say, anticipated matchups. But the significant part about this is not the triple title headliner. It is that for the first time since UFC 248, in 2020, we will have a capacity crowd. The UFC will make its return to Jacksonville, Florida at the VyStar Veterans Memorial Arena. Fellas, I just want to get your takes on this because we are still in the middle of a pandemic and the UFC is now just fully jumping into COVID is over. So, fellas, what do we think? Is this the right time for crowds to return to mixed martial arts?
Well, if you listen to actual scientists, they will tell you no, the time is not yet. We're getting closer, but it's not the time. You know, they've been kind of saying, you know, around summertime we can kind of look at those sort of things being an option as the vaccines continue to make their rounds around the country, but we're not there yet. So this rush to fill up an arena is it's asinine right now. You can look at other sports, the NBA, for example, who holds games every single night. They're not trying to cram 15,000 people into the stands right now. And they have exponentially more resources than the UFC does. They're averaging I think about 10 teams are averaging around 3,000 in the arenas that are actually having fans right now. So it's nowhere near what the UFC is trying to do here. It's premature. It's irresponsible. It's all of those things, especially considering that COVID is still very much here, people. It's not over yet. I don't understand this just fascination with pretending that it's gone and it's over. Just yesterday, or actually over the past week, Florida alone has been averaging about 82 deaths a day over that's the 7-day average. 30 yesterday, which would be Sunday as the time of recording this video. So people are still dropping left and right. And just to pretend that, hey, we're going to go fill up an arena just because we want to be first to do so on the tail end as we are kind of ramping down the COVID thing. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
So Drake, just want to get your opinion on this. Like, are you surprised to see the UFC returning to full capacity crowds at this time?
No, unfortunately, not surprised. If I'm surprised about anything, it's the fact that they're going to do this in Florida before Texas. That seemed like everything was pointing at, them going back to Texas first before, Florida. And I think that they even applied, or at least obviously Dana mentioned reaching out to Texas about, going to do shows there again and all that. So not surprised, especially if we've been paying attention to Dana whatsoever and how, the guy is been just really persistent about doing things his own way and has done it for the most part. So this isn't surprising. It's pretty crazy to think about, though. Like, just when I really sat and took it in, wow, they're going to go back to, I don't know about the mask thing. Will people be required to wear masks in this situation? I'm sure some will, but maybe not required, right? So it's I just can't imagine this going flawlessly where nobody who goes to the event doesn't end up getting it if they fill it out completely. It clearly does not seem very smart. And it's really crazy to think about the fact that, okay, he's just going to do it. And I would imagine he Dana specifically in the UFC won't go back to, they'll move everything there now. Cause he said, once we can go again, we're going. He's been saying that once we can get back to normal, I'm sticking to it. And assuming nothing goes absolutely, ridiculously wrong, which, you know, is possible, then I don't see him going back to the Apex or anything, or no crowds. So, yeah, it's crazy to think about, not surprising, but yeah, I feel kind of, it's weird how Weili is the last full crowd and then the next full crowd. Isn't that something maybe a little traumatic for her? We'll see how that plays out. But yeah, not surprising ultimately, but not smart, I don't think.
Yeah, I'm more surprised that we didn't think of Jacksonville as a logical destination for the UFC's return to
Right.
capacity crowds. I mean, we take us back to a year ago at this time, and when UFC 249 was essentially canceled or postponed or whatever terminology was being used at the time. I mean, it was that mad dash to get the UFC set up shop somewhere, and they explored the possibility of Native American territory that was unregulated, and that got shut down by forces at Disney. That pulled the plug on that one. The creation of Fight Island was specifically to go against the grain on regulatory affairs, and Florida was specifically Jacksonville, Florida, at the VyStar Arena was the only place that they really could have gone to set up shop at that time. So we think back to that press conference where Dana was talking about how Governor Abbott of Texas opened up everything, lifted the mask mandate, and he was so excited to get the UFC back to Texas. But his resistance was not from the state government. It was from the local governments that would actually have to host the promotion and host this event. So the city reached out to Dallas and they turned it down, and Houston turned it down. You could probably presume that San Antonio and Austin and other major cities in Texas shut down this idea. But we already know Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida has been very I'm not even sure what phrase to use and maintain some level of objectivity here.
Florida
but
man.
He's been Florida. He's been very Florida. And of course, the local government in Jacksonville was also supportive of this. And that is a very key component. So they allowed Jacksonville open the doors for the UFC along with the state of Florida. So it makes sense that they're doing it yet again, and especially now with a light at the end of the tunnel of this global pandemic, that's the place that they would end up becoming home for at least this one event. Although, as you guys alluded to a little bit earlier, we can presume this is probably going to be the first of many stops in Jacksonville.
Yeah, and like you said with the Texas thing, I'm sure the conversations went a little bit differently when Dana said, yeah, we want to not only bring an event, but we want to fill up the arena. And then the mayors were like, you want to do what? Because contrary to popular belief, not everybody is on board with what Greg Abbott is doing here in Texas and what he's calling for. In fact, it's a wildly unpopular opinion to, release the mask mandate so early and just open up everything. Opening up everything has been somewhat popular, but doing that in conjunction with eliminating the mask mandate, not so much. So I could definitely see when you call up Jacksonville, be like, hey, this is what we want to do. We want to fill up the arena. Florida is buck wild. You guys do everything however the hell y'all want to do it. Oh, and hey, we're going to put 2 fighters with Florida ties in the main event as well. So it's really going to be popular with you guys down there. And I'm sure they're like, okay, sounds good to us. Let's do it. We're Florida. We don't care. So yeah, it makes sense that Florida would be the guinea pig for this wild social experiment that will be this event. I am very curious, like Drake kind of hinted at, what will be the safety protocols in place, if any, whatsoever. I think that's the biggest question going forward, because if you're trying to fit 15,000 people in this arena that seats 15,000 people, doesn't leave very much room for social distancing. So I'm dumbfounded. I'm curious. I mean, obviously, like Ant said, two of the 3 fights, 3 title fights here, I'm very interested in. I have no interest in seeing Kamaru Usman versus Jorge Masvidal again, but we'll get into that in another video here very shortly. So be on the lookout for that, people. But yeah, it's it's an event, and I guess it's going to happen. I mean, I
think it's important to point out too what you said about the capacity crowd. So we can presume we know Dana made the calls to different places in Texas to get the UFC set up over there. We've seen Canelo Alvarez fighting in Texas. Last weekend in Dallas, Chocolatito and Estrada fought, but you saw social distancing. You saw a limited crowd. Everybody had masks, at least that I can remember seeing on those broadcasts. So I'm sure that conversation went a lot different. You know, that to answer the phone to Dana White trying to bring the UFC to your town and bring this publicity and drive some dollars, and the state commission can go and collect their fees and whatnot. So this is a good thing for a state to have the UFC there. But then when that conversation turned to, yeah, we're going to fill up the arena, not so much, fam. I think that's sort of the direction that those went, and obviously Florida welcomed them with open arms. Drake, I'll kick it to you on this one, man. Do you think in the long term, like the grand scheme of things, will anyone remember that the UFC was first to fill an arena post pandemic?
Probably not. If we're going to be totally honest, I don't know if people even really think about the fact that they were kind of the first to, start back up again. Not at full capacity, of course, but to get events going and everything. Like, yeah, sure, it's something that when mentioned, you're like, oh yeah, that is right, that did happen. But I don't think it's something that people really are going to care about. Like, it's not a huge deal. Depending on the results, right? Like if it goes terribly wrong, as we were kind of talking about, and a bunch of people get sick, all this crazy shit happens, the card falls apart, all this madness, then we'll remember. Then we'll remember that this was a terrible, idea and experiment to kind of go through with. But if it goes smoothly, then of course it'll be just kind of business as usual. And oh wow, this was the first event back. So I guess, well, when you look at it that way, it'll be more memorable, I think, than the one where they started back up, which I don't even remember which one that was specifically. I guess it was technically 249, right? So
Yes.
I do remember that, but it's like I had to think about it. You don't just remember it right away. Of course, it'll be a nice talking point for the business side of things, again, if it goes very well. But if it doesn't, then they're going to want to not talk about that at all.
Yeah, I can imagine this becoming just like a Jeopardy question at
Right.
some point in the next 10, 15 years or something like that, because it is kind of funny when you think back the insistence on being first, the insistence on being open and being, and pumping out content. That was something that Dana was really, really, really adamant about at the start of the pandemic. And people were kind of on board with that until mainstream sports came back too. The UFC was the only game in town until it wasn't. And then when it wasn't, mixed martial arts went back to being, second, third tier offering. When you had the NFL running, you had the NBA running, you had full leagues going that typically take up the airtime. And the thought process of the average sports consumer. So I think that's kind of where we're headed again. Like, this will be a big deal until the NFL decides to pack its own stadiums, and then this will be forgotten. This will just be a footnote in history. So I feel like this is one of those things where this is more about hubris than it is anything else. You think about the situation that the UFC has, like they're winning, like you're winning. You're getting a boatload amount of money per event, no matter how good or bad the quality is. You're paying the fighters like pretty much bottom of the barrel for their services, and you're doing this in the self-contained zone, which you have your own production, you have your own venue, you've got everything self-contained. Why start then branching out and outsourcing when it's still not safe? It just screams of an egotistical move, as opposed to anything that's genuinely related to the health and betterment of the sport.
Yeah, 100%. And they've rattled off 2 straight events with no COVID issues, which is the first, I think, since COVID started, right? Where you had 2 consecutive events with no COVID issues. So they got incredibly lucky with that over the past couple of events, but you still had other issues, obviously, with injuries and stuff like that happen. It's it's crazy to think that they're just moving forward this quickly. And I don't think anyone's going to really care at the end of the day that they were first to come back with a full crowd. And it's just going to be one of those things that everybody's looking at them like, okay, what's going to go wrong here, more than, oh, this is going to be an incredibly successful event. Like, nobody's going to be thinking of it in that light. I guess us three included. So we'll see how it plays out, I guess.
Can't think of a better way to wrap this one up. So you know what you got to do: like, subscribe, share, tell a friend to tell a friend, tell that friend to tell 10 more friends. So stick around on the Body Lock. We will be discussing the matchups, the 3 title fights, breaking down the X's and O's, and just what it means for their respective divisions. So stay tuned for that.